In the 1960s and 70s, a serial killer and necrophile, Patrick Kearney, was on the loose in Southern California. Targeting boys and young men, the killer would shoot them in the head and have sex with their corpse.
I asked him, well, how many people have you killed? And he said, I don't know, but more than 30.
Once his urges were satisfied, he would dismember his victims, dispose of their body parts in trash bags, and leave them on the side of the road.
Once the police realized that these were very specific garbage bags, the pieces of the jigsaw puzzle were coming together, and they were coming together very clearly.
He became known as the trash bag killer, and his face is now synonymous with evil.
I think when we imagine what a serial killer may look like, he wouldn't necessarily be the first thing people would think about. He looked very normal, and that is what enabled him to be as prolific as he was.
In October 1975, 21-year-old Larry Gene Walters was hitchhiking when he was picked up by Kearney near LAX airport.
Our parents had 7 children. Larry was the second oldest child. I was a year younger than him. We grew up near LAX. LAX was our backyard. Larry was our older brother. We were really his older sisters because he was mentally slow. So at the age of 21, Larry had the mentality of maybe an 8 to 10-year-old child. He was not very streetwise. He believed anything you told him. He trusted everybody. He loved music. He loved his Bible, his church. He just loved life. Larry had come to my house that day at noon. He just worked down at the end of the block from where I lived. And I said to him, instead of going home tonight after work, why don't you just stay at my house tonight, get up in the morning and go to work, and that way you don't have to hitchhike. So that was the plan.
That evening, Karen left the door unlocked for her brother and went out to a party.
We went to the party and came home and could see he had been there. He was a mechanic, and so I could tell he had taken a shower there and washed up, but hadn't cleaned up the bathroom like he normally would, so I thought he'd be right back. And he didn't come back. The next morning, my mother called me and said Larry was supposed to have come today and he didn't. And then we knew something was wrong. So my mother went and filed a missing persons in that area, and then we waited.
Kearney's victims were all young, they were all males. They reminded him probably of himself, and especially of himself at a younger age. You know, effeminate, young, wayward youth, not necessarily fitting very solidly into society. They were easy prey for Kearney.
During the time that Larry was killed, everybody hitchhiked. Larry was picked up on Imperial Highway and was driven not very far. And when Larry went to get out of the car, he was shot in the back of the head and never knew anything from start to finish.
During Kearney's interview, he would reveal even more disturbing details of his crimes.
I think he enjoyed killing them, cutting them up.
After he'd killed them, he would then have sex with their dead body. They couldn't fight back. They couldn't laugh at him about any perceived flaws. He was in the ultimate control there. Not only had he killed them, but he was also then degrading their body after death as well. He would take identifiable parts of bodies into the desert where they would be exposed to the elements or they would be eaten by animals. So this is a really quite sophisticated forensic countermeasure that he employed to avoid detection.
One murder Kearney did remember was that of Larry Gene Walters.
A year and 3 months Larry had been missing before we knew what had happened. The day that the police contacted my mother and said they needed to speak to me because I was the last one to see him, they wanted to get my story and corroborate it with what Kearney had told them. Kearney had apparently told them after he had been arrested, I'll tell you about 5 deaths you don't even know about. And one of them was my brother, and he told them, these bodies will never be found. Larry has never been found.
Kearney is clearly, we can assume, a psychopath, but he still displays logical thinking, organized thinking, clear, coherent speech. There's no indication of psychotic symptoms or delusions or hallucinations. There's not even any indication of depression or anxiety. So from a clinical perspective, he absolutely does not appear to be suffering from any major mental disorder other than psychopathy. And from a legal perspective, is he sane or insane? He's absolutely sane because he knew exactly what he was doing and he knew how to do it.
Kearney would finally come to admit his motivation for the murders.
Sexual gratification is what he told me, and I believe that to be true. That sexual gratification was linked to the expression of violence. And so the two became one. He told me that he felt empowered. That's why he had sex with their bodies, or some of them in a semi-conscious state after he shot them in the head. He would cut a hole in them and have sexual intercourse with their bodies because he felt empowered by it. That was part of his ritual, that was part of his sexual gratification.